Hi, my name is Gabby Hall, and for purposes of this presentation, I will be talking to college universities and students about campus sexual assault. So what is sexual assault? Sexual assault is defined as a range of sexual offenses from showing indecent images to another person, kissing or touching them without consent, and penetrating someone's body with another body part or object without consent. There is sexual act, sexual touching, sexual assault, and aggravated sexual assault. I will be focusing on sexual assault, which is when a person has sexual intercourse with you when you don't want it or cannot consent for it. Aggravated sexual assault is when someone has sexual intercourse with you without your consent, aggravating circumstances. So sexual assault is more prevalent at college when you compare it to other crimes. For example, outside of college, there are 5 robberies for every 5 sexual assaults, while in college, there are 2 sexual assaults for every 1 robbery, according to RAINN. 11.2% of all students experience rape or sexual assault through physical force, violence, or incapacitation. Among undergraduate students, 23% of females and 5.4% of males experience sexual assault. Campus sexual assault dates back to 1957 when the first published study about campus sexual assault, called Male Sex Aggression on the University Campus, appeared in the American Sociological Review. In 1975, the term known as date rape was established, meaning that an aggressor may press his advantage to the point where pleasantness quickly turns to unpleasantness and more than the woman bargained for. This definition can be found in the Women's Studies Encyclopedia. In 1985, there was one of the largest scientific studies done at the time that included more than 6,100 undergraduate men and women. This survey revealed that 1 in 4 female college students had an experience that met the legal definition of rape or attempted rape. This study ended up resulting in a book by Robin Warshaw called I Never Called Rape. The history of campus sexual assault goes on, and most of the time these victims end up getting no justice. Most of the rapists end up getting suspended or kicked off sports teams as their punishments. So with some more recent events, in May 2001, a college basketball player was raped by 3 men that were also on the school's basketball team. At Yale, a fraternity was suspended for 5 years for having its pledges march through the campus chanting "No means yes, yes means anal." So in 2014, the White House Task Force to Protect Students from Sexual Assault released its first report called Not Alone. This defined the problems of campus sexual assault and offered the White House's first set of actions and steps recommendations for college universities. As our textbook mentions, victims of sexual assault often experience a feeling of helplessness. But with sexual assault cases, victims often do not report the crime to law enforcement due to a variety of reasons. Some of these reasons include believing it was a personal matter, having a fear of retribution, believing it was not important enough to report, not wanting to get the perpetrator in trouble, and believing the police would not or could not do anything to help. But we do need to remember that not any crime is not important enough to report. As of 2020, statistics showed that only 20% of female students report sexual assault to law enforcement, and only 32% of non-student females do report it. But female students aren't the only ones that fall victim to sexual assault. In May 2016, at Baylor University, the football coach Art Briles was fired and Kenneth W. Starr was removed as the president after an investigation found that the university mishandled accusations of sexual assault against its football players. So there is a variety of advocacy services available for sexual assault victims at a federal and state level and also on and off campus. The National Sexual Assault Hotline is a safe, confidential service that can provide you with support, local resources, finding local health facilities, referrals for long-time support, and information about the laws in your community. The Clary Act is a consumer protection law that aims to provide transparency around campus crime policy and statistics. To comply with the Clary Act requirements, colleges and universities must understand what the law entails, where their responsibilities lie, and what they can do to actively foster campus safety. This requires that colleges and universities receive federal funding for public annual security reports. So most college campuses have resources and policies in place, as I mentioned. For example, SUNY Plattsburgh has measures in place to address and prevent sexual assault. Plattsburgh offers many options, including counseling, medical attention, confidentiality, and making reports to the Title IX coordinators. Following up on the Clery Act, all sexual violence cases at Plattsburgh is required to be reported to them. We also have Planned Parenthood as a great advocacy service. They offer medical support and resources for victims. They also have a sexual assault resource center that has counselors available 24/7. All of their counseling is free and confidential and includes short-term counseling for victims as well as their loved ones. Although we have all of these advocacy services, the efforts are still needed. We need to educate everyone on sexual assault and consent, including explaining the different types of sexual assault that I had mentioned in the beginning of this presentation. We need to show support to victims and acknowledge the trauma that they have gone through. The stigma that goes with rape and sexual assault is very prevalent, and no victim should ever feel shame or fear. Everyone should have the option to safely report a sexual assault and receive the proper physical and mental health services. Now, we have grown up in a rape culture of victim blaming, where women are told to follow certain rules to ensure that they stay safe from sexual assault. This means that women should not wear revealing clothes, not drink too much, and never go anywhere alone, especially at night. The Orange County Rape Crisis Center mentions how victim blaming is a pervasive part of the trauma that many rape survivors experience. Victims are met with a checklist of questions that are centered around their actions instead of the actions of the perpetrator. This is why we need victim advocates and why we need more support for them. We need to have victim advocates there and ready to support the victims because they are going to get hit with too many questions. They are going to be traumatized. They are going to get rape tested. Their clothes are going to get taken. They're going to be photographed, and it's terrifying. You don't want to have to go through this after going through such a traumatic experience, even though it's needed. And many victims end up being the blamed ones for not following the unofficial rules that come along with being a female. This leads to sexual assault being justified and discourages victims and survivors from speaking up and telling people about their traumatic experience. Now, I found this quote from the Problem with Victim Blaming article, and it says, "Sometimes people resort to victim blaming as an attempt to maintain an illusion of their own safety from sexual assault. In this case, it is easier to police the list of rules and insist that following them will prevent assault than to acknowledge the scary truth that rape can happen, regardless of what the survivor does or does not do. But rape happens because of the rapist, not the length of a hemline or the amount of alcohol consumed." Perhaps the most famous case of campus sexual assault is of Brock Turner, a former Stanford University student and swimmer that was convicted of sexually assaulting an unconscious woman and sentenced to 6 months in county jail and 3 years probation. The district attorney on this case said the punishment does not fit the crime. Campus rape is no different than off-campus rape. Rape is rape. And as I had mentioned before, usually the punishment is just suspension, expulsion, or getting kicked off a school team. There's not usually any prosecution, and not many of these rape get reported, and not a lot of them go to jail, and justice is not served. I've included the Me Too movement campaign. This is the lady that started the whole thing, and she explains what the Me Too movement is. And I think it is a very important thing for everybody on college universities and students to understand and know. As for the future, current pending issues remain the same. There's a lack of education and not knowing where to seek help or file reports. We need to continue to educate students and college faculty members, along with continuing to advocate for survivors and not feel fear or shame. Being a survivor of sexual assault is not something you should be ashamed of. You survived a traumatic event and you should be supported for that.